Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our video, Inclusion and Cooperative Learning. One of the biggest issues that teachers face on a day-to-day basis is the issue of teaching to diverse groups of students. Diversity in schools can present itself through many different modes: race, culture, language, socioeconomic status, learning styles, and learning disabilities, just to name a few. The topic of inclusion specifically addresses students with learning disabilities, as well as the legal and ethical issues of working with learning disabled students. Before we go more in depth on this discussion, it's worth noting that the label learning disabled should not be narrowed down to any group in particular. Rather, it encompasses multiple categories of possible disabilities. The categories that Nath and Cohen mention in the textbook are as follows: specific learning disabilities, speech or language disabilities, mental retardation, serious emotional disturbance, other health impairments, multiple disabilities, hearing impairments, orthopedic impairments, autism, visual impairments, traumatic brain injury, and deaf or blindness. We're going to discuss a little history of inclusion, the pros and cons of inclusion, and how to teach in inclusion classrooms using cooperative learning strategies. The other way in which students' learning disabilities are addressed is through cooperative learning, which goes hand in hand with inclusion, since collaborative learning efforts between regular and special education teachers support students. According to Irwin, the true essence of inclusion is based on the premise that all individuals with disabilities have a right to be included in naturally occurring settings, in activities with their neighbors, peers, siblings, and friends. According to Richard Tompkins and Pat Delaney, in the early 1800s, residential institutions began to emerge in order to accommodate those with hearing, visual, mental, or emotional impairments. Although access to those facilities was far from universal, such institutions remained the primary educational option for the disabled until special day schools came into fashion in the early 1900s. These allowed greater, more localized access and somewhat better services to individuals with disabilities. During the 1950s and 1960s, parents of children with disabilities organized to pressure courts and legislatures for changes in educational services available to their children. They began to seek access to public schools as an issue of civil rights for those with disabilities. Among the results of these efforts was the Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975, which mandated that all children, regardless of disability, had the right to a free, appropriate education in the least restrictive environment. As a result, resource rooms and self-contained classrooms for those with disabilities expanded in public schools. In 1986, Madeline Will cited concerns about some negative effects in the special education pull-out programs. Her proposal suggested that greater efforts to educate mildly and moderately disabled students in the mainstream of regular education should be pursued. Since then, support has grown for all students, including those with severe and profound disabilities, to be included and educated in classrooms with non-disabled peers. Let's now take a look at the pros and cons of inclusion in schools. The pros for students with special needs include that they are able to make new friends and share new experiences, learn motor and communication skills that they may not have learned outside a regular classroom, have a sense of belonging at school, and become more creative through watching others. The pros for students without special needs include that they will be more accepting of individual differences, they will acquire leadership skills, they will have a diversity of friendships, and they will learn to cooperate and tolerate others. Here are some of the cons of inclusion. 1. There may not be the appropriate resources, training, and other supports necessary to teach students with disabilities in the classroom. 2. Parents are concerned that LD students may not receive the individual teaching that they need to learn. 3. Teachers may have to spend too much time with one student. Thus, average students may not receive the help they need. 4. LD students may disrupt class, thus taking valuable learning time away from class instruction. 5. The range of abilities is just too great for one teacher to adequately teach. Consequently, the mandates for greater academic accountability and improvement are unable to be met. Likewise, parents are concerned that today's teachers do not have the appropriate education or time to meet their children's needs. Some parents believe that their children's needs will be better met outside of the regular classroom. And 6, parents are also concerned that their children will be bad. Now, one way to ensure successful teaching in an inclusion classroom is for the classroom to have a regular teacher and a special education teacher. In addition, it is important that cooperative learning is used in the classroom as much as possible. Cooperative learning consists of 3 major components: lesson preparation, lesson instruction, and lesson evaluation. During the lesson preparation component, teachers select objectives to target for instruction and cooperate learning groups. They also plan the activity, identify individual roles, and establish diverse groups. The lesson instruction component of cooperative learning refers to the time in which cooperative learning activities occur. Lesson instruction consists of direct instruction of the skills, a cooperative learning activity, an important aspect of the lesson instruction, and finally, in addition to all of these things, the teacher must have students transition quickly, have activities and materials ready, monitor student progress, and reinforce the occurrences of collaborative behaviors. During cooperative learning activities, teachers should circulate among groups monitoring the student's ability to complete the assigned activity. The teacher can monitor work by asking questions to help students redirect their work, provide additional instruction to some students who may be struggling, and reinforcing students' efforts to work collaboratively. Finally, the purpose of the lesson evaluation component is to assess student mastery of the objectives and the group's ability to work collaboratively. Teachers can conduct an evaluation by observing students during the cooperative learning activity, having students complete individual tasks following cooperative learning activities, and asking students to engage in group processing, also known as self-evaluation. Well, that's all the time we have for now. We hope that this video has been informative and that you understand a little more about inclusion and cooperative learning. Thank you for watching.